Is food too cheap? And also, are we eating too much? Now, I've probably spoken about this in some of the videos that I've made, and I certainly don't want to end up like the BBC, full of repeats. But I think it's important to address food face on, particularly at the moment where we have a bit of a crisis in terms of the type of food that we're eating and the type of food that we would like to eat and the type of food that I think people are slowly waking up to realise the type of food we ought to eat, the food that's actually healthy for us, food that has vitamins and minerals and goodness in them, food that's grown in soil that hasn't been damaged by pesticides, fungicides, insecticides, herbicides and all these others besides. So I think it is important to talk about this, both firstly because real food actually is quite pricey to grow, but also, and I think that the food that we see in the fast food chains and in the supermarkets has been artificially lowered. And the reason that they can do the artificially lowering of the price is because perhaps this food is not actually as wholesome as it could be, or it's been hugely processed and contains a lot of other bits and pieces in it to sort of spread it out a bit and make it go a bit further. But that's no good to us as human beings who need, especially in this day and age with all the toxins in the air and toxins in the water and all around in the environment, we need as much health giving food that we can have. So just having ordinary bland food is not really going to cut the mustard, so to speak. So is it first of all, is it too expensive? Now, I mean, I go to a farm shop with the lovely Julia, and we spend quite a bit of time selecting our food and being very careful about what it is and its provenance, where it comes from, and how healthy it's going to be to us. Because why would you put anything into your body that has no nutrient value? Why would you put food in that basically is just bland and is sort of just passing through and not actually helping you get through the day, increase your health, your longevity, keep your skin looking nice, and so on and so forth? Why would you do that? So being selective in the stuff that we put into our mouths and goes into our gut and then gets into the very cells of our body is, of course, extremely important. And we found, of course, by going to farm shops and alternatives to supermarkets, that the prices are naturally a lot higher. However, if you're only really buying so that you are healthy and that you're going to find that actually by eating more healthy food, you don't need to have, say, 3 meals a day, and you're not, let's say, grazing on sweets and confectionery and things that are full of useless stuff, like, I suppose, too much carbohydrates, as in chocolates and cakes and things like that, and sugars, of course, then actually I've found from personal experience, and I think this is true, that a lot of people who start to change their diet, that actually if you eat one very good meal of wholesome stuff and maybe have perhaps some nuts and some dried fruit and various other things like that throughout the day, a sort of a grazing but healthy grazing, but really cutting out much of the overloading our system with lots of food, you find actually you don't need too much to eat. We're all overeating generally. And of course we're overeating because we're eating that food that seems to be satisfying for the moment, and then it sort of disappears and you have that craving to eat again. And so finding the right balance and the right diet is extremely important. Of course, there are so many diets out there and so many versions of it, and I'm not here to recommend any one because I have no scientific basis in it. But I think that by trying to eat a balanced diet of whatever it is, vegetables, of course, and meat, personally, now some people want to be vegan and some people want to be vegetarian, and of course you're entirely at liberty to eat whatever you want. But the thing one I feel should be doing is trying our damnedest to eat the best quality and the best food that has the most nutrients and minerals, so that you remain with vitality, so that you don't need to have all these other things. And I find now, and I don't deliberately go on one of these, what do they call it? Alternative fasting or intermittent fasting. I don't deliberately do that, but I find I don't need to have breakfast. I very rarely eat before midday. I might have a snack or something, maybe a boiled egg or perhaps the odd bit of bacon or something like that early, towards the afternoon, and then something in the evening, a nicely cooked meal, perhaps some meat, but not all the time, because sometimes I use meat as a garnish, and lots of good, wholesome, fresh vegetables. And then I find that actually, although I'm spending a bit more on the quality of the food, I'm not eating the quantity, and it sort of evens out. Now, I know if you've got children, if you're on a low budget, the temptation, of course, and I did it with my children before I was awake, before I was aware of what was going on, and we're talking sort of 25 years ago to 30 years ago. Yes, we would buy these cheap pizzas and these TV dinners for the children, and I regret that now. Absolutely I do. But I wasn't really aware. However, once you become aware that the highly processed foods actually are detrimental to not only your physical health but to your mental health, there would be no way that I would be giving that to my children. And so I realize that this can be seen, eating proper food can be seen to be a very middle class sort of thing, going to farm shops and spending a bit more money and being a bit la-di-da with your food. And people who have not very much can't do that. And I get that, and I understand that. And this is where trying to get people to grow as much as they can, to get in with a community of other growers, so that even if you have not got the space, that you help others, that you take the kids out into an allotment or onto a friend's allotment or some of these new communities that are springing up. And so that you, in exchange for your labour, for your help, you get some real wholesome food. And again, I know we're all a bit time poor, because we're all having to work hard because the cost of the living has gone up and all of that. And it's very difficult. But somehow, somewhere in all of this confusion, in all of this turning our backs on authority, on all of this growing up and being adults, we've got to improve our health, because without that we have nothing. If we can make food something that we respect, again, something that is important, more so than many of the other trinkets that we buy, upgrading to a new phone, upgrading to a new car, buying so many clothes all the time, brand new, and perhaps sourcing them from charity shops or other places. I mean, I used to go to jumble sales when I was a kid. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have to, or that you shouldn't do these things. It depends on your income. But I'm just wondering whether we ought to have more respect for food and make it much more. It is the most primeval and the most important thing, the stuff that we put into our bodies on a daily basis, that keeps us healthy, keeps our minds fresh, keeps us centered, and is good for our spiritual being, which is going to be very much part of the future. So I think that maybe, and these are just my opinions, and I'm not telling you how to live your lives, of course, live your life however you like. But we do know that a lot of people are eating the wrong food. We see that in the shape and size that they have. We see how perhaps the woke agenda are saying, oh, no, body beautiful, and we should respect that. But if people are basically overweight and are not very healthy as a result of that, maybe a nudge to eating proper food and eating less will help them in the long run, making food the most important thing that we have each day. Healthy food, respectful, and maybe also do what we used to do and bring the family around the table as we eat food that we've cooked from scratch, from those raw materials, that is really good for us. So I ask again, do we really think that food is actually that expensive? And in the future, as more people are starting to set up these initiatives to grow more food that we make organic, and in actual fact beyond organic, those foods that are really healthy, is it really that healthy? Is it really that expensive to spend just that bit more on food and less on having to go to the doctor, have medicines, whether that's just your aspirin or your paracetamol or your antibiotics or whatever else, from conditions, from eating less healthy food? I think that maybe we should, but I'd be interested to know what you think. But my real concern is those people who can't afford and are finding themselves trapped in having to go to supermarkets. We need to find a way that we can help those people to eat at least one healthy, quality meal every day. And I think that's going to be part of the solution for this new world that we're creating, that we turn our we turn our backs away from this dictatorial, tyrannical way in which we eat synthetic foods and highly processed, and look for a way that all of us can afford to have good quality meals, and that we, as a result of that, can thrive.